All right, Steve has offered up a good talking piece here that I actually put on my list. I just ran across this about an hour ago from our buddy Pat Murphy there at Bucknuts in regards to ranking the positional groups for Ohio State. And we can bring this up. And I think in terms of number 10, let's see if you guys basically agree that we will start with defensive tackle being a sore spot.
I like the starters, Edric Houston and Caden McDonald, but nobody behind him has ever, really done anything in a live game. And I think, we need to see a little bit more. I think Taiwan Malone was kind of put in as a backup. I wouldn't say by default, but maybe by seniority. And it's time for Jason Moore and Will Smith Jr., Eric Mensah, some of these guys to really step up. They've got the size, and they need to provide support there at the two tackle positions. I don't have a problem with this group being the bottom of the barrel.
No, and I mean, Stevie said we like the starters. And really, Edric Houston had 7 tackles last year. Caden McDonald had 19. We assume they're going to be fine, but they've never really played more than 25 snaps in a game, and they've never had to be relied upon to play 50 snaps over the course of 12 straight weeks or whatever. So I'm with you that they should be fine, but even when things are so questionable behind them that you just assume like that's the bright spot. Let's talk about the dark spot, and it's like we just assume they're going to be a bright spot, and if they're not, then things are really going to be difficult for the defensive front.
And they probably need how many guys to rotate through that they feel comfortable with against good teams, meaningful minutes?
I think you need 2 more, but they're also going to run a bunch of rush men, with 4 defensive ends, and Bo Atkinson's a bigger guy that can get in there, and Caden Curry's not the biggest guy, but he played defensive tackle in high school, so like he's accustomed to that. But Taiwan Malone and Jason Moore, I think, are the 2 guys. They're the most. Taiwan Malone's a 5th-year guy. Jason Moore, I believe, is now a 4th-year guy. So they need to be doing something, and maybe one of the freshmen can step in, like Jarquez Carter can create something and be something, like a Tyleek Williams was as a true freshman, and just in terms of I can be in the 2 deep, because right now, as quickly as Edric Houston moved into the 2 deep last year, he moved from defensive end to defensive tackle during the bye week after the Oregon game, and then was Tyleek Williams' backup when they came back out of that bye week. So that tells you a little bit about, I think that says as much about the guys that were already at defensive tackle as it says about Edric Houston. So those guys need to be better than they were, and I assume they are, but how much better?
If things don't work out for Taiwan Malone, I guess he can look forward to being the number 1 pick in any kind of softball reunions the Buckeyes have.
I bet that dude would do pretty good in the old professional softball leagues.
Defensive end, very close to the same position, obviously, up front. So you don't want to be weak at 2 contiguous positions here. So obviously they lost the 2 stars plus some.
Yeah, I think, Caden Curry and Kenyatta Jackson got to play a good bit last year behind JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. But in some regards, they're still unproven. And then you bring in Logan George from the FCS ranks, and Idaho State, and Bo Atkinson coming in from North Carolina, CJ Hicks moving from linebacker to defensive end. It's got the makings of something pretty good, and Logan George did have some disruptive plays in the spring game. Again, they're going to have to get after opposing quarterbacks, particularly in those big matchup games, or they're going to get picked apart, and that's just the fact of the matter. So we'll see what Matt Patricia has in mind in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback, if it's a 4-man rush or if there's going to be some different kind of exotic blitzes and different things that are put in there. But I want to see more out of this group, and I don't have a problem with them being at number 9.
Yeah, I think I might move them up a little, but that's projection, because like we talked about with Caden McDonald and Edric Houston, we just assume all of these guys are going to be good, and they've never been asked to do it. I was looking, we did a show, a Buckeye Weekly episode coming up for later in the week about the 5 breakout players on defense, and Kenyatta Jackson is one of my picks, and it's like, well, he's a 4th-year guy. How can he break out? And the thing is, like, he's had 10 tackles in Big Ten games in his career. So like that's it. And he's not been asked to do he's not produced a bunch of stats yet. And he's going to need to this year, and he's going to need to be producing a bunch of snaps as well. So I think there's just assumptions that these guys are going to work out. And you got 5 guys who are all 4th-year players, and they've all played various levels and done various things. So it should be better than this. But I get what Pat Murphy's thinking. It's a rarity for me, Steve, when I understand.
Me too, bud. don't. Yeah.
No, but they should be better than this. But I also understand them being here.
And CJ Hicks has to be the ultimate boom or bust on the defensive side.
And there's really no, even if he's like, I thought Mitchell Melton was pretty good last year, but he hardly played. So what does it really matter? Like, if CJ Hicks is that good, it doesn't mean he's going to play much. So he's got to be better than that. And, he's working at it. We see him after practice, during interviews every day, working with like Matt Patricia back in spring practice. So he's trying to get there, and we'll see. He's got the athleticism for it, but what else can he do? And is he he has to be more than just, I guess, a pass rusher, because then it kind of gets predictable about what he's going to do. But they also want to find things that he does well and then put him out there for that. So little column A, little column B, give and take with him.
All right. And next up, we're looking at, quarterback. Well, this makes sense, obviously. A ton of inexperience.
Yeah. Somebody's got to be 8th, I guess. And I think that the coaches probably believe they can win games with either Lincoln Kienholz or Julian Sayin. If push comes to shove, I do believe Julian Sayin has the inside track. I think Rob Aller from the Columbus Dispatch the other day wrote a column. Does anybody believe that this quarterback race is close, as Ryan Day and everybody there has tried to portray it? And is this just a facade that, to keep Lincoln Kienholz, around? And I don't know that that's necessarily the case. I think it's good that you have 2 guys that can play. Obviously, Tavian St. Clair has some immense physical attributes, a big arm, but just learning at this point as a true freshman. So, it's not a good sign when your quarterback group is not one of your better position groups. But again, it's supposedly a pretty talented team, top to bottom, side to side. So again, the difference between 1 and 10 may not be all that pronounced, but I guess that's the leg I'm going to stand on here, with the hope that the quarterback position comes through.
I would probably have defensive end here and quarterback at 9. But in terms of what, like Steve, you mentioned what Rob Aller wrote, having seen what we've seen in practice, I didn't see one guy clearly ahead of the other. Like I certainly didn't see Julian Sayin clearly ahead of Lincoln Kienholz. Every time we saw them, I think Lincoln had the better day on most of those times. So I think the more that you see them, the more that you see like there isn't one guy pulling away. Now Julian Sayin looked better in the spring game, at least at the outset, and that's what everybody remembers. But Lincoln closed it strong, and I think everybody's going to say they expect Julian Sayin to be the starter, and so do I. But I don't think it's as clear as I think the staff would love it to be as crystal clear as some people think it's going to be, because that would be good news for how Julian Sayin is playing. But he's not been playing to that level yet, and he's got to get there if this is going to be as clear as everybody wants it to be.
To Steve's point, I would not want the quarterback, the offensive line, or the defensive line to be down near the bottom of the stack. I could get away with running backs. I could get away with maybe linebackers. I don't think I would want my secondary to be one of the worst units on the field either. And then also, if you go down a couple rungs in the Big Ten, maybe 5 or 6 rungs, and then look at their position breakdown, you're going to have this cascade of positions, meaning that Ohio State's worst position is obviously just loaded with talent. They just have inexperience and need guys to step up, as opposed to true, none of these positions are necessarily weaknesses. They're question marks. It's what they are at this point. All right. I guess next we are looking at, and with Lincoln Keenholz, he's coming up on his 3rd season, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. If I'm him, regardless of whether I lose the job, well, he's sticking around anyway. But poor play or injury or a combination, there's a likelihood that he's going to be needed for something meaningful. So. At number 7, we've got safety. And of course, we got one of the best players in the country there. But of course, Lathan Ransom moves on.
Yeah, this one created a lot of consternation for our readers in the comments section underneath of this, and even for us internally as a staff, as Pat was trying to bounce these off of us. There were arguments that how can you have an All-American player as one of the 2 players in the position group and have them this low. But he does. I think we're waiting to see what happens with Malik Hartford and or Jalen McLean there at that other safety position. It felt like Malik Hartford had the inside track to it, but Jalen McLean also last year as a freshman came in and did a pretty good job. So I guess I want to see more out of that other position. And Lathan Ransom was very much woefully underrated, and he had a great year. And so to replicate that, I think the group has taken a step back, but for an All-American to be part of a 2-man unit and for it to be the 7th best unit on the team, I don't know that I agree with that. But
I also want to know, where is Caleb Downs playing, because he played free safety last year. He's playing strong safety this spring, and wherever he plays is going to impact which of those other guys is likely to start. Malik Hartford plays more free safety. Jalen McLean plays more strong safety. So I just think there are a number of questions about the position as a whole. And I'm going to assume when we get to cornerbacks, he's throwing nickel in there as well, which I think is another question entirely of how this is going to shake out. And actually, I see nickelback as part of this. So I think I believe it is. And so then when you bring that in, is Lorenzo Styles Jr., it's his 5th year. We assume, he was the guy with the ones all spring, and we assume he'll be okay. But replacing Jordan Hancock is going to be incredibly difficult. So I think there's going to be a drop off there, or at least it would be fair to expect a drop off there. And, does Bryce West get involved there? So I think there are enough questions at safety compared to maybe the other positions. And again, these are all relative to Ohio State, not relative to Illinois or relative to Northwestern. Like, you put all of these guys on Northwestern and every position group would be number 1, but that's not what we're dealing with here.
Yeah, and then you also have the factor that obviously you need waves along the defensive front. I know at one point at least they like to play 3 corners basically and have 2 on the field and then kind of rotate them through. But at safety, how much of a blow did they give the 2 starters?
They did not do much of it last year because those 2 guys were so important. Now Matt Patricia talked in the spring this year about how they could do that with Hartford and McLean and have things for each of those guys that they specialize in. So there could be some of that this season where even Caleb Downs gets some breathers, but how often do you want to take him off the field? So I think they'll do some of that. But yeah, those 3 guys, Downs, Ransom, and Jordan Hancock, they were on the field as much as they needed to be last year because they were so good together, and they all operated basically as one. And when Jordan Hancock had to play a lot of free safety last year or a lot of deep safety, and then Caleb Downs or Lathan Ransom would be up in the box. So they all work in tandem, or triplicate, I guess you would say, in triple. And so you need that to work again this year. But does that mean they're going to do it the Hartford and McLean and Downs together on the field at the same time? I don't know. But I think the nickel is going to factor in somewhere as well. So maybe you'll see 4 or 5 guys playing. But is that because there isn't one guy that is super outstanding above the others? The level has kind of fallen a little bit, maybe.
We've got our buddy Yakov checking in with this one. My only Archie football memory, I believe he's alluding to Arch Manning, obviously, with the Texas connection, playing the Buckeyes, is the 1982 Super Bowl. So that would not be Archie Manning. Of course, that would be Archie Griffin. Nice little play there. You did a lot of connective work there, Yakov. Nice job.
My only Archie football memory is the 2023 spring game or the 2024 spring game where Archie went, I don't know, 25 yards through the heart of the Midwest for a touchdown in the spring game. In terms of Arch Manning, this hype is annoying. Like, let's let him do something first before we crown him. You want to crown him. But let's let him become a starter and acclimate for a while and let him struggle before we just throw everything on him like they did with Quinn Ewers. Give the guy a break.
He's hit some wide open guys against Louisiana Monroe. He's done that.
Yeah. Again, another one of the great unknowns we don't know going into 2025 football. I mean, is he going to be the real deal on a series by series, play by play, game by game basis?
Now, even if you're not old enough to remember Archie Manning playing in the NFL, I know that the one play that he made, I believe, as a Houston Oiler, has made the circuit pretty well in terms of, football follies and all that, where he runs around about 80 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Then he whips the ball underhand, like 30 yards to somebody. Yeah, that was kind of one of those standby zany plays that you see quite often. Number 6 for the Buckeyes, linebacker.
I think you're going on potential for Arvell Reese. He got in there and made some flashes at times, sometimes in a 3 linebacker set, sometimes as the second linebacker. They sent Cody Simon off to the NFL. Got Sonny Styles coming back. I mean, I don't know. You could make a case that safety could be, ahead of linebacker here. I don't know. But Styles, to me, is a third-year starter. Will have now seen it all. Excuse me, I'm struggling. And as Pat does say here, as a likely captain in Ohio State's Block O, he could become, he says, the best linebacker in the country in 2025. 100 tackles last year. Of course, that came in, was it 16 games they played? Good Lord. So 100 tackles ain't what it used to be. Just kind of like those guys getting 1,000 yards isn't maybe necessarily as big a deal as it used to be. But I think I think this is a good group, and James Laurinaitis coming into his own as a position coach, and we'll see how Matt Patricia uses the linebacker group. Does he play 3 linebackers, and does that give Peyton Pierce a chance to get out on the field, or one of those freshmen that Pat's listed here? Riley Pettijohn, to me, looks the part. So I want to see what those guys can do, and my guess is that there'll be plenty of games after the Texas game where we will get a chance to see that depth in action.
Yeah. Sonny, I mean, this is just going to be his second year at linebacker, so he should also step up. Arvell Reese, first year is starting as a middle linebacker. I think there's some questions there. I think everybody assumes it's going to be fine, and Peyton Pierce stepping in as the Arvell Reese from last year, 30 or 40 tackles is, I think, a fair expectation. So I, 6th, I'm okay with that. I do see Michael Campbell in the chat talking about Sonny Styles, and they had a Styles there for a while before he decided he no longer wanted to be a Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yeah, which in terms of team accomplishments turned out to be the right move. And number 5, missing a couple guys that I think some people have heard of. They move on to the NFL within 3 picks of each other in, I believe, the second round. Quinshon Judkins, of course, and Travion Henderson. So this is a group, I got to say, that I think you guys are a little bit more confident just because you guys are more familiar with James Peoples got a little work last year, but I'm not thinking that this is a great group of running backs myself.
Well, I liked what I saw in the practices we attended. Bo Jackson, as a freshman, looks like the real deal. James Peoples is going to get the first shot at this. And if it doesn't work out very well, then I think Bo Jackson will get a shot, and certainly CJ Donaldson will get a shot. Donaldson could be maybe the Judkins, and Peoples could be the Henderson. I think Jackson could be another Judkins because he's a big, strong running back. So, and Sam Williams Davis is also in this collection as well. So, and I thought he had a pretty good spring too. So I don't have a problem with him being maybe this high. I think this 5, 6, 7 range is very close to figure those ones out. So he went with running backs. I don't have a big problem with this. I think Peoples, again, it's a huge jump to go from playing 5 carries a game to maybe 20, 25 carries a game if they call you. So, it's a big jump for him.
Yeah, I think this is a bit of a projection, but the way people talk about James Peoples, including his coaches, you assume he's going to be fine. But I'm with you, Mark. There's a lot of questions here. And CJ Donaldson leaving West Virginia, where he was a part-time starter, a co-starter, and never really was excellent, other than I think the first 5 or 6 games of his freshman career. There are some questions there. And when we talk about Bo Jackson perhaps being a guy that could be in the top 2, then what does that say about everybody else when you're talking about a freshman possibly getting in there? So I think 5 is a little high, but I also won't be shocked to see it turn out this way because Carlos Lachlan has done very well at Ohio State.
Yeah, my reservations are more about the 2 guys that left. As good as they were, that there's going to be a drop-off, most likely, because they were probably the 2 best in the nation in one backfield. All right, up to number 4, we go to the offensive line, which is actually a nice little resting spot for the offensive line compared to other off seasons, I'm sure.
I think the offensive line is going to be one of the strengths of the team. Urban Meyer always talked about how Ohio State is an offensive line-driven program because if you can sustain drives and put the ball in the end zone, you are a very difficult team to beat. And I think what we saw at the end of last season was an offensive line that was coming into its own. You have 4 guys with starting experience coming back, plus you're bringing in Ethan Anianwa from Rice to play the left tackle. Looks like Austin Sierreveld would be the right tackle with Philip Daniels also there, the transfer from Minnesota. And the middle 3, to me, seems like it's set with Luke Montgomery, left guard, Carson Hinzman, center, Tegra Tashbola Shabola at right guard. And then you got some pretty good backups here. I think Ian Moore is a guy that's going to mix some things up. Josh Padilla is backing up at center primarily. I think you got the potential there. If you have to, you could go 6 or 8 deep again. If you have to, you never want to, but I guess we'll have to see how it all shakes out.
Yeah, I think there's a very deep group with a ton of experience from last year. And I think they know who their starting 5 is right now. And now it's building the 6, 7, and 8th and 9th guys and getting them as prepared as they need to be because they needed 9 guys last year.
We move up to number 3 and the cornerback position.
Well, you lose Burke. You lose, I consider the nickelback to be a corner because that was what Hancock, I believe, pretty much was prior to, going to that nickel slot corner position. But whatever, it's all semantics. Davis Igbinosun, 3rd year as a starter. Yes, he's a little handsy. Yes, they know they knew they're going to throw frags on me when they name me a starter. They knew this. Pass interference holding, they just have to decide which one it is, most of these plays. But, Jermaine Matthews Jr. got in there in the Texas game when Denzel Burke was injured and did a bang-up job, although, I don't think we're going to confuse last year's Texas passing offense with Quinn Ewers with Air Coryell anytime soon. But yeah, I think Igbenogson and Matthews give them a strong starting tandem. Aaron Scott, Bryce West, Devin Sanchez, all in the mix. Lorenzo Styles Jr. Can play corner, can play the slot corner, can play, whatever. And they cross-train these guys pretty well. So, yes, I like 1 to 6. I like this group.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with Aaron Scott and Devin Sanchez in the backup there, to see if somebody can create a 3-man rotation, kind of like they finished last year with. I think they'd love to do that over the last 10 games of the season. After that Oregon game, Jermaine Matthews was playing 30 snaps a game. And if they could get somebody like that to be their number 3 cornerback at some point, I think they'd sign up for that right now.
Folks out there, I'm getting my first look at these membership tiers. We've got the Block O Club. We've got the JT Wasn't Short and the We Don't Give a Damn. So sign up for your membership and you'll be able to read right there what kind of benefits are included. And I've got to certainly marvel at the relentless nature of Michael Campbell's comments, just considering, it's almost like these teams didn't play 7 times in the last 30 years.
Or each of the last 3 years. Loss.
Oh, my goodness. Funny. Jackson, appreciate you being here, man. Thank you so much for this.
What was it that Clubber Lang said? I reject the challenge of Balboa because it is no challenge, but I accept the chance to whip on him again, or something or the other. It was really funny the way he said it. Much funnier than the way I said it, but that's Ohio State's relationship with Notre Dame right now. They reject the challenge because it is no challenge, but if they are put on the field, they will accept the challenge to whip up on Notre Dame one more time.
Rocky 3.
That's
Jackson. It's got May 29th pegged as the 6th anniversary of Buckeyes Live. I don't know how the math works out, but we'll trust Jackson on that, I suppose. 50 weeks times 6 is obviously 300. You tack on the 2 times 6, and I've got 12. But whatever it turns out to be, we love the spirit there, Jackson. Mark, Steve, and Tony going over the best moments of the show with all of you. Thank you for that, Jackson. We appreciate you. Jackson is relentless, by the way. He is, you talk about relentless in a good way. He's all over our network and others out there in the college football universe, including his own channel and own show. So appreciate that, Jackson. All right, let's kick it back to the top 2, and drum roll, please. At number 2, are we shocked? It's not the other position that catches the football. It's tight end, with a good one coming in from the Boilermakers.
I love this. You lose G. Scott, and he was pretty good, but you got Will Kazmarek, who's an outstanding blocker. Bennett Christian was in on some important plays last year down the stretch, and he's a very good blocker. Jelani Thurman is coming into his own, as a playmaker. And then Max Clare coming in from Purdue. He had led Purdue in catches last year. I know Purdue was terrible, but he looked really good in the spring. And I'm excited to see what he can do for the Buckeyes. Max LeBlanc, I don't know much about him, and I tend to doubt he's going to get to play a whole lot. But, Keenan Bailey, the tight ends coach, is going to help Brian Hartline formulate the offense as kind of a co-coordinator. And Keenan's going to, slip in there under the file folder. Here's a couple plays with 12. 2 tight ends. So I think we're going to see some 12, and rightfully so, because I think these guys are versatile. And I mean, Jelani Thurman was in there. I want to say the Penn State last drive. They put him in, and I mean, that drive went so well that they started with one group of tight ends, and then about the 4th or 5th play, they subbed in the second group of tight ends, and they just kept churning the balls right at Penn State. And to me, those are experiences that you can't pay to replicate. So you got, I would think, I mean, there's no All-American tight end in there, but I got to think 1 to 4, it's the best group of tight ends in the country, but whatever, or one of the best. That's a little hyperbolic because Penn State always has a good collection as well. But I would say one of the better ones in the Big Ten and one of the better ones in the country.
Yeah, I think this is the deepest group on the team, and hard to imagine a deeper group nationally. I mentioned this a few weeks ago. Like 5 guys played in the national championship game. 5 tight ends played in the national championship game. 6 of them played in the Tennessee game. So if you're able to go, they will play. And I don't think Max Clare is an All-American just because he won't have the numbers. He'd probably top out. I don't think he's going to get 50 catches in this offense, and other tight ends will. So, like, he's not going to get those accolades, but he's also not necessarily looking for them. I just think it's a really good group that can do a bunch of different things. And as Steve said, they're going to play a lot of 12 personnel this year and try to get those guys as many snaps as possible.
And
I'll just throw in, I think 18 different people caught passes in the spring game. So that'll tell you that they really want to spread the ball around to a lot of people. And of course, maybe in that instance, it was how it will be when you're playing Texas. It's Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and Max Clare and, throwing the ball to people's out of the backfield and those kind of things, I would think.
Our buddy Patrick could have probably just put number 1 wide receiver and then
just left it at that. Yeah.
Let it go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you lose Emeka Egbuka and you still have an All-American with Jeremiah Smith. You've got a guy who's really on the cusp of breaking it big with Carnell Tate. Brandon Ennis just scratching the surface of what he can do. Quincy Porter and Mylan Graham. Mylan Graham's a redshirt freshman. Quincy Porter is a true freshman. They were both outstanding in the spring and in the spring game. And you got an older guy, Bryson Rogers, who's just waiting for his chance to get into a game and make a play or two. And, I think, what would that be? 1 to 6. I would say 1 to 5, it's outstanding. 1 to 6, it's pretty good. So, is Hartline going to use more than 2 or 3 wide receivers? He really has not done that. I mean, Ennis got a little bit of run as the number 4 last year, but pretty much it was Egbuka, Smith, and Tate, every play. So that's the challenge, I think, for Brian Hartline, is to find ways to get Mylan Graham, Quincy Porter, Bryson Rogers into games.
Yeah, and I think some of that has to do with the top level was so high that the level below them was a significant drop off, and I think maybe the drop off won't be as bad this year in all areas. I'm interested to see what happens with Brandon Ennis and Bryson Rogers. The average season for a slot receiver since Ohio State came to Ohio State: 67 catches, 907 yards, 8 touchdowns for the starting slot receiver. And I don't think Brandon Ennis will get there because they're going to play so much 12 personnel, but he's going to have a much bigger season and a much bigger impact on this offense than he did last year. And he was the number 1 receiver in the 2023 class for a reason. So we'll get to see why this year.